Hey everyone, welcome to the UFO Hub live stream. Today is going to be open lines where I hope to talk to some of you over Telegram voice chat where you can share your supernatural stories with me. The way you do that, if you don't have Telegram and have not joined the UFO Hub Telegram group, you can download the program on your phone or your computer and simply install it and join the group first. And you'll see a voice chat going on live right now where it's voice only. It's also streaming currently on, I always have to be reminded, Facebook, Twitter, or X now, YouTube, and on one other platform. Let me see. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. There we go. All right. Well, anyway, so you can, if there's nobody that logs in to Telegram to share their stories with me immediately, I figured I'll go over some things with all of you. I have some videos prepared, also some testimonies, and what else I have? I also would like to discuss a coin conspiracy, I call it, or the U.S. quarter coin conspiracy, something that was brought out to my attention by my wife, and I thought, wow, I want to talk about this. So anyway, that's for later on. But if there's no one else that wants to join to talk, I'll go through everything first, and then I'll open it back up again then. If there's nobody there, I'll go to the chat and see if anyone submitted any questions, and I might just talk about or answer some of those if I can. And after that, that would be it for the live stream today. So anyway, if you are just submitting questions in your chat and you don't want to talk to me directly, please make sure to put 3 asterisks in before you basically submit the question, so that way I know it's something intended for me instead of just the regular chatter that's happening in the chat rooms. Okay, so let me basically get started. So you have the info how to talk to me and join. And right now, I have some listening, which is great. You can also use Telegram to just listen if you can't watch or don't want to watch the videos. But yeah, if you do join, there's a little figurine or a little person on the bottom that kind of looks like they're raising their hand. That tells me that you want to chat, and they'll get me a notification here. All right, well, let's get started. So I want to get through some videos because today I'm actually wanting to focus more on some more of statements in the news and some other statements made, and also testimonies basically given from a while back. They were new to me, and I was not aware of these. Maybe some of you watching are, but I figured then we can go through all these, and of course, your feedback is always welcome. So let me switch over to the browser real quick. So first one I would like to start out with, and again, I apologize, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not exactly sure what they're exactly saying, but I conflate this almost to a Mexican version of what we had with the Tic Tac. And so I'm going to play it for those of you just listening or even watching. Some of these audio levels go higher or lower. I'll try to catch it on time and lower it so it doesn't blow out your eardrums. But I figured I'll start with that one. And what it is, basically for those just listening, it'll be there's these pilots as they're observing these different orbs from their aircraft and basically talking either to each other or down to ground control. I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not quite sure, but I figured we'll watch that in its entirety. And for those that are listening, speak Spanish, at least you'll have something to listen to and hear what's being talked about. All right, let's start with that.
A las 7, a la misma altura.
Hay unas nubes ahí, se debe de estar.
Pero, a ver, busquen eso que viene atrás de nosotros.
Ve cómo se ve como en 2 faros.
Viene como a las 7, 8 de la posición. Lo raro es que trae una punta adelante. Un puntito adelante.
A ver, ¿qué tenemos?
Nada, señor. A ver, permítame, déjale busco.
¿Y nosotros?
Comandante, ¿qué es eso?
¿Qué distancia más o menos lo tenías, Telles?
Oye, a ver, abusados, es como...
Ahí van más, siguen más atrás. Son 10, 11 objetos.
Son muchos objetos.
Afirmativo. Ahí van. Va, uno. Y ahí van los atrás. Siguientes.
¿Qué es eso, Dios mío?
¿Se anda correteando?
¿Qué es eso? A ver, trata de enfocar.
Máximo.
Ok, no dejes que los dejes atrás. Ok,
Van.
Sigue ese, no lo dejes,
No,
Telles.
van todos. Van aproximadamente
Ay,
como
cabrón,
10.
como
¿Ya lo dio?
4.
¿Ya lo dio? Y van
Sí.
pasando.
tú maneja, no lo
Varios,
pierdas.
Sí. Ahí van.
Ahí van. 3, 4, 5, 6. Son 6.
¿Abajo o arriba o arriba?
En medio ahí van.
Ahí van a ir 1, 2, 3,
la misma
4,
altura.
5.
Qué barbaridad, ¿eh?
Ahí se van a ver bien. Y van a una velocidad, pero... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla.
Síguelo, no lo cierras.
¿Están a la misma altura, Telles?
Afirmativo.
Poquito, arriba.
8, 9, 10, 11 contando toda la cola. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11.
Ok, no sabemos qué estamos viendo, son unos objetos nada más luminosos que vienen a la misma altura que nosotros. Pues no podemos saber qué distancia. ¿Por qué nos vienen siguiendo?
Okay, from the little bit that, I mean, I recognize numbers being said, and just kind of seeing these little, almost like a small fleet of orbs flying across, and definitely you can tell they're trying to count out how many they are, and I'm just again assuming that they're just trying to figure out what they are. But anyway, so in case you haven't seen that footage, now you have. So let's go over the next one. I'm not going to play the sound on this one, so I'm going to explain it. It's footage of a triangular UFO that you can see that there's a triangular shape in the middle, and each point has one orb or one light with a red light in the middle. And it's been heavily stabilized to where the object itself is very stable and close to the center as the screen kind of moves around it, and that's what stabilization generally looks like, because otherwise it would be if they didn't, the object itself would be kind of all over, but this way it helps observe it better and what's it doing, and at least whatever quality can be obtained from this video to see it. I don't know if it's CGI, but at least it's worth watching and seeing it, and you make up your own mind. I guess it's because it seems to be that there's rain, and so there's not much, actually nothing said. So I'll just basically, for those that are just listening only on the podcast, just explaining basically that it's a video, probably cell phone or maybe an older camera that recorded this object that obviously looks to us as a triangle with each corner lit up and one red light in the middle. And even though it's stabilized, you can tell that it's actually over one point in the sky and very close to whatever building that seems to be. And slightly moving as well if I just carefully watch, like there we go. It's rotating more clockwise. But it's just basically over this person's house, and that's it. It ends basically just showing that. Yeah, the rest, the audio was not that good. It was just rain or whatever was happening, and there was nothing else to be heard. At least if the person was commenting, it'll be worth turning the audio on. So this one, I will play the audio and I'll play the video in its entirety, but it's several different videos of what seem to be satellites flying around, and you can tell they're going in different directions, and then other objects kind of coming around them and doing different loops where like, okay, that's not just a satellite flying in a straight path or a predetermined path. And there's basically other little segments in this. And it's about 1 minute and 15 seconds long. and there's some talking later on, but for those of you that are just listening, at least it just give you an idea of what you are basically not seeing. And I wish I could give you more of a description. Yeah, you can definitely tell there's too much erratic maneuvers where, again, it could be somebody fooling us and CGI, or something really cool that this person happened to capture.
Oh, here's another one right here. You see him? Flying right over our heads. Pointing it right at him. And now he's turning.
Ooh,
Yeah.
flashed.
Yeah, you see him?
Yeah, it just flashed.
I'm lasering at him.
The second part that has audio, and again, for those only listening, it basically, this guy has a green laser kind of following it along, and it keeps going to straight path and then stops, comes back, and then starts zigzagging around to where, and then it flashes a few lights, and that's pretty much all they had captured. So anyway, I thought it's always cool to kind of review some videos. If you've seen them, great. If you haven't, now you have. And I'm hoping to do that more often, just to, I guess, if I don't have anything captured myself, at least expose most of you out there to whatever is looking pretty cool. There are some things that look cool, but it's very obvious it's CGI, and I don't know, it's no point of, basically propagating that all the time. I'm sure I might have shown you some CGI, but that's because they're just really that good and it's worth looking at. So at least it'll give you a perspective to see, okay, well, this is fake, this is real, and maybe in the future you'll be able to pick that up better from watching videos. All right. Okay, so the next one, and also let me see here. This is from Exiled Earthing, so I appreciate them posting that on X. These previous ones were from Vicky Verma, so I appreciate them also posting there, and you can certainly follow them as well. It seems like they have they're posting a lot of videos on X, and if you have an X account, you can just basically go and follow them and see things for yourself if you want to be staying a little bit more up to date, or you just wait for every Wednesday, and if there's an open line, I will try to find some cool stuff for all of you. All right, the next thing is a little a minute and 47 seconds clip from News Nation with Michio Kaku basically kind of changing his tone about UFOs and basically how, I don't know, you'll hear it for yourself. I would say basically how now scientists are looking at this differently, or maybe the immediate scientific group that he's surrounding himself with. But anyway, these are his words about the recent UFOs.
And they exceed the capabilities of our aircraft and those of our enemies as well. And
sorry. It looks like I'm starting at the very middle of it. So let's restart that again.
You were a betting man. Do you think that we have been visited by extraterrestrial life?
Well, first of all, I think Neil is correct that it is a low form of proof, but now we have videotapes. Now we have hours of videotapes taken by Navy pilots, and we are analyzing them frame by frame to find out what kinds of physics is involved. And we're constantly shocked that if these things really do perform like we think they perform, then they exceed the capabilities of our aircraft and those of our enemies as well. And so we have to look at the data. And right now we're still getting more data. And the good thing is that we're now being flooded with videotapes Military pilots do not fear being fired anymore for reporting these things. We have more data than we can deal with right now, and that's a good thing. And that's what it takes, data. Things are going to live and die on the basis of data.
Yeah, and you say we're in the middle of a change right now when it comes to UFO sightings. Tell me more about that. You say the burden of proof has shifted. What do you mean by that?
That's right. It used to be that when you had farmers and school teachers talking about they saw something in the sky, the military would simply giggle, laugh, and say, ha, that's not proof. But now the burden of proof has shifted. Now the military has to prove that these are not extraterrestrial. Now that we have the videotapes showing that these things are executing things that we cannot use our own aircraft to duplicate, we asked the military, can you explain it now? So the burden of proof has shifted. The military has to now show that these aren't extraterrestrial, and so far, they cannot.
All right. Well, that's definitely a change of tone, especially coming from him. And again, I don't know if I know there's these different groups of scientists, and I don't know if he's considered mainstream, or maybe because of his interest now in UFOs, whether or not he got kicked out of that group and there's another group that's doing all that. But it's certainly refreshing to hear these kind of things, not only earlier in the month from government changing the tone, but also somebody like him talking in the way that he does. All right, the next video I want to show you, just show you about it, and some of you, if you have some comments, please leave them in the comment section. This is this basically is just a statement by Ross Coulthart, who interviewed David Grush, or released that initial interview on News Nation with David Grush, and this is in reference to these different balloons that they were shooting down, and they just made this general statement that these balloons were just balloons that were shot down, and that's it. But he is making a statement here that it was more anomalous and a different story of what happened, at least with one of them. So I'm going to play that, and I'll let you hear it.
Revealing anything about where it is, who's got it, and what's being investigated. But watch this space. On the balloons, we're talking here about the balloons in February, the February shoot downs. Now, to give you some official response on this, I think a very senior defence official was just recently quoted in the newspapers as saying that there was nothing alien or extraterrestrial about these shoot downs, about the objects that were shot down. And I thought that was a very interesting comment, because the information I have is that two of the objects were indeed prosaic. They were just mundane objects, probably weather balloons. But there is an abundance now of sources, including a guy who literally lives at the end of the road in Alaska where this object was encountered by an F-22 jet. There was definitely a missile fired at an object which was described as looking a little bit like a giant tic-tac, funnily enough, that something was seen to fall off that object, but even though it was hit with an AIM missile, which is the top of the line air-to-air missile, the object kept on going. And I've put this to different people in defence and intelligence, and I've been told that yes, the Alaska object was anomalous. And anytime I try and get a response from anybody on an official basis, they run 100 miles an hour. But you might notice that nobody has given a report back to the American public or the world about what it was that the US, for the first time in the history of NORAD, they shot something down over North America. That's an historic event. And yet we haven't been told, neither has America, the full story of what those shoot downs involved. I'm told two of them were prosaic, but one of them was anomalous. And I mean, I'm happy to be proved wrong, but it would be very, very interesting to see an explanation from the White House. And I just think it's very conspicuous that we haven't had a response. Moving to the third point that you asked me about why.
Okay. So yeah, there was speculation, I remember at that time, that some of these weren't just balloons and all of that, but again, it kind of immediately entered the realm of conspiracy on the internet. So it's hard to tell what's fact, what's fiction, because a lot of times, I mean, I'd love for things to just be clear and factual so that we can see and make up our own minds. But I don't know. Sometimes stories come out. We'll listen. If keep it in the back of your mind. If more information comes out, great, you know about it. Otherwise, I don't know. It's hard to tell. So these next segments, they're a bit lengthier. Not the first one, but they're basically some are testimonies. This particular one is from Senator Barry Goldwater back in 1988, and he basically makes this 54-second statement about basically this UFO room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And so I never heard this part before, so I wanted to share it with all of you, and I thought you might also find it interesting. And the next one is another video, and it seems to be a part of a documentary that was shot, I don't know, maybe in the 90s, but it's about an event that happened in 73, if I'm not mistaken. We'll check it out in a second, about a helicopter being very close to a UFO and having to maneuver around it very quickly so that they felt like they were going to hit it, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll hear it here in a second. So let's go with this first. Here's Senator Barry Goldwater about the UFO room.
I think the government does know. I can't back that up, but I think that at Wright-Patterson Field, if you could get into certain places, you'd find out what the Air Force and the government knows about UFOs. Reportedly, a spaceship landed. It was all hushed up, quieted, and nobody have never heard about much of it. I called Curtis LeMay and I said, General, I know we have a room at Wright-Patterson where you put all this secret stuff. Could I go in there? I've never heard him get mad, but he got madder than hell at me, cussed me out, said, don't ever ask me that question again. I think the government does know.
Yeah, but just repeating now. Yeah, so it's interesting too, just to hear, because right now we're in that same process, right? We watched the hearing not that long ago about senators and representatives wanting to get to the bottom of it. And it seems like it's not just now, it's been happening for ages now, with different senators having made some progress, having found out certain things, and then later on, once they're out of office, talking about it, but kind of, that was pretty much it. It stayed in that realm. It didn't go any further than this. So anyway, I thought it was interesting to hear this and see this clip. The next video is a bit longer. It's about 6 minutes, 39 seconds, and it's Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Coyne, and he was basically he's a helicopter pilot. And so I'll let this documentary explain it, or this section of the documentary explain it. And it's basically his encounter with a UFO. And I wasn't able to find any information on this, but apparently this case was also discussed at the UN. And I was trying to search before the show, roughly about 2 hours prior, so I'm sorry I didn't dive any deeper than that to find out was there any other information on this, and I couldn't find it. Okay, let me play this for you now.
I looked out the window and observed this light moving at a very excessive speed, in excess of 600 knots, coming at the helicopter. It looked like a lockdown missile.
A family of 5 in a car observed the strange red object on a collision course with Colonel Coyne's helicopter. They pulled off the road to watch.
The thing that makes this particular evening a unique experience was that it was almost a mid-air collision with an object that you know as a UFO. We did not know it was such until it was on top of the helicopter, and that took just a matter of minutes.
Colonel Coyne put the helicopter into a dive to try to avoid impact. When he and his crew looked up, the object was keeping pace with them.
While it was in this position, the green light came at from the undercarriage of the UFO.
Colonel Coyne cut the power and set the controls for a steep dive. In spite of this, the helicopter was pulled upward toward the UFO from an altitude of 1,700 feet to an altitude of above 3,700 feet. Colonel Coyne and his crew observed the strange UFO at close range for approximately 2 minutes.
The object that I viewed that particular evening had a high degree of technology. It was composed of a structure and a design that we do not have. The object can move through the atmosphere without causing any turbulence. It can move at high speeds below 10,000 feet. There are no vertical or horizontal stabilizers, no landing gear, no source of propulsion reflected on the craft. Looks like it could fly in space.
This is Major Coyne, Army helicopter pilot. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Arrigo Jetsi, Air Medic Sergeant Healy, and Robert Janicek. These men had just finished their annual flight physical early that day and were found fit and sound of mind. They would take off from Port Columbus Airport about 10:30 p.m. But what was about to follow and the subsequent report they filed would put to the test the credibility of these men.
Approximately 8 miles east of Mansfield, our crew chief, Sergeant Robert Janicek, observed a red light on the east horizon.
Did you gentlemen see the same red light?
Yes, I did. Our helicopter was flying on a northerly heading. We were flying at an altitude of 2,500 feet. He indicated that the light seemed to be pacing the helicopter, moving along in a parallel direction with our aircraft.
Which direction from the helicopter was the object?
Moving, it was to our right, to the right side of the helicopter. And it was moving with us as we were heading north towards Cleveland. And at this time, he indicated that the light changed its direction and was coming directly at the helicopter at the same altitude. And as the helicopter was maintaining a speed of 90 knots, the object came at a terrific speed from the horizon. We estimated 15 miles. Visibility was reported 15 miles that night.
Did you gentlemen see the object at this time, after it had been pointed out by the sergeant?
No, not at that time. I was flying left seat or co-pilot, and visibility from that seat from an object approaching from the right is rather limited. So I was having a difficulty seeing the object. And it was for that reason that Major Coyne did take the aircraft or the controls from me.
I grabbed the controls from Lieutenant Jetsi because I thought it was going to hit us. I braced for impact. With that, I pushed the collective down to get the helicopter to start to descend. I then looked at the altimeter. It was showing 1,700 feet, and we were descending 1,000 feet a minute. The helicopter began to descend, and as this object came at the helicopter, it seemed to descend with the helicopter. When the helicopter went down, the object came down, but it still came directly at our broadside, as if to hit the helicopter from the right side.
Did anyone else see the object at this time?
Yes, I was watching it come out of the east horizon. And the only thing I felt was when the skipper took over the controls and we started to auto-rotate down, and I'd never been involved in a mid-air collision, so I was just watching this thing come at us. It was at this time a light swung 90 degrees from the UFO towards the helicopter, and it came in through the front of the plexiglass, and the entire cabin inside turned green from the light. It was a pyramid-shaped type light that beamed down and came through the front of the helicopter.
How long was your aircraft bathed in this beam?
The light that came into the cockpit apparently lasted only for a few seconds, but it was enough time that I observed the red instrument panel lights utilized for night flying to be absorbed by the green light.
Was it possible for you to determine the outline of this object against the star background?
Yes, sir. It was a cigar-shaped object, like a symmetrical airfoil with the dome on it. It was a solid object. It was a metallic structure to it. And you could see lights reflecting off the structure, and you could not see any of the stars or behind the object itself.
Well, while all this was going on, what was the attitude of the helicopter?
Apparently, when we were supposed to be descending at 2,000 feet a minute at 100 knots, we were climbing at 1,000 feet a minute with the controls still established for a descent. And we went from 1,700 feet up to 3,500 feet and topped out at 3,800 feet. I would like to stress one important fact, and that is there is approximately 20 years of Army aviation experience between the 4 men on board the helicopter that night. We have been trained to follow procedures and regulations in reporting incidents, regardless of how they're accepted. And we try to follow those procedures. And we reported the incident as it occurred and have avoided any speculation on the subject.
So you see, in a lot of ways, there have been testimonies by military, and for those who are maybe new to this because of this recent brouhaha in the government and all that, and UFOs making their way more and more to mainstream, there have always been reports that, you know, at least in this case, there's a nice little documentary about it that covers things and gives you some information. But having military coming forward and basically giving their testimony, it's not anything new. Just the only thing that is new is now that they're not being stonewalled or ridiculed anymore, like with David Grush and some of the others, they can come forward. So I'm hoping there'll be a lot more throughout all these different decades and times of them, just different military personnel coming forward, sharing whatever they've experienced. Because unless you're a private pilot that has a license and a plane to fly, these kind of things would pretty much kind of only, you know, come from the military. On the other end, civilian, you always just kind of have a contact, or in the early days get abducted. So in a ways, you know, there's either a story of a contact or an abduction, or a basically some military personnel doing their job and basically interrupted during their daily happenings. So the last video I have for you, it's from the former and now unfortunately passed away former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer. I tried many times, I think twice he was very polite, declining to do interviews. I also tried to get him to come to the UFO conference, Ozark UFO conference, also was not fit to travel during that time. And unfortunately, soon after, it turns out that he passed away. But this was during, I believe, a conference. I don't know which one. There's a watermark of saying exopolitic.org. So I don't know if they just watermarked the video, or was this the conference that they actually took this footage? But there's some very interesting stories that he shares, and I want to show this one to you all now.
Well, thank you very much, Steve and Cheryl, for that much too generous introduction. If my late mother were here, being my mother, she would believe every word of it. If my late father were here, being a realist, he would probably wonder who you were talking about. But introductions of that sort remind me of the small boy who fell headfirst into a barrel of molasses. And when they pulled him out, he licked some of the molasses from his face and said, "Lord, make my tongue adequate to this occasion." Well, actually, this is not my night for humor, and I'm not a match for either Stephen or George. So I'm not even going to try to be funny. Except my first line, and that's after this wonderful banquet, I think that I have exceeded the feed limit. Bad humor, you better believe it. I wish that I were in a mood for good humor, but I'm not. We are hell-bent in the direction of destroying our planet, and frankly, we appear to be doing very little about it. Decades ago, visitors from other planets warned us about where we were headed and offered to help. But instead, we, or at least some of us, interpreted their visits as a threat and decided to shoot first and ask questions after. The inevitable result was that some of our planes were lost, but how many were due to retaliation and how many were as a result of our own stupidity is a moot point. Wilbert Smith, one of the first Canadians to take an active interest in the subject of UFOs, asked the visitors about the accidental destruction of our aircraft by flying into the vicinity of a flying saucer. The response, and this is Wilbur's words, we were informed that although a few of our aircraft had come to an unfortunate end by what they considered the colossal stupidity of our pilots, they were now taking corrective measures to avoid our aircraft. I asked them, and this is still Smith, I asked them what happened, and they said, well, the fields around the saucers in order to hold them up, in order to produce the gravity differential, the time field differentials which were necessary to operate the ship. These sometimes produced field combinations which reduced the strength of materials to the point where they were no longer strong enough to carry the loads that the materials were expected to carry. Now, as we know, aircraft, particularly the military type, are built with a rather small factor of safety. And in these regions of reduced binding, the materials are no longer strong enough to carry the load, and the craft simply comes apart. When I read that, I was reminded of the late, great soprano Lily Pons, who used to smash crystal goblets with her high C. She would direct the sound at them, and something in the sound waves would change the structure of the glass, and it would fly apart. Well, this didn't satisfy our military chiefs, who must have thought that it was more important to secure American nuclear superiority, even though using it would result in the annihilation of us all, than to take the hint and start moving the planet back from the brink of global disaster. They, the military, must have been and still are so paranoid that they feel it necessary to use the visitors' technology to fight them off, rather than welcome them as partners in development, though they may have seconded a few renegades to assist them in what can best be viewed as diabolical developments. Stephen has said that talking about UFOs is passé, and that we should be talking or limiting our talk to exopolitics. Well, Stephen, I agree with you in theory, but in reality we have a problem when official U.S. policy insists that UFOs don't exist. The veil of secrecy must be lifted, and it has to be lifted now, before it is too late. It is ironic that the U.S. would begin a devastating war, allegedly in search of weapons of mass destruction, when the most worrisome developments in this field are occurring in your own backyard. It is ironic that the U.S. should be fighting monstrously expensive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, allegedly to bring democracy to those two countries, when it itself can no longer legitimately claim to be called a democracy, when trillions, and I mean thousands of billions of dollars, have been spent on projects about which both the Congress and the Commander-in-Chief have been kept deliberately in the dark. How much has been accomplished in 60 years of feverish activity by some of the most educated minds in the United States? Has America developed flying saucers that are visually indistinguishable from the visitors, as alleged? And if so, what do they propose to do with them? Even more critical, what progress has been made in the development of clean energy sources that could conceivably replace fossil fuels and save the planet from becoming a veritable wasteland? Well, who has the answers? Someone does, but apparently they aren't telling either secretaries of defense or presidents because they don't have, quote, a need to know. In a story told by Dr. Stephen Greer, President Clinton was asked a question by White House reporter Sarah McClendon about why he didn't do something about disclosure. And Clinton replied, "Sarah, there's a government inside the government, and I don't control it." Excuse me, doesn't the commander-in-chief and the person who allegedly has their finger on the nuclear trigger have a right to know what his subordinates are doing? The people of the United States who have paid the bills have the right to know. The people of the world demand to know because it is our descendants too whose lives are in mortal danger. It is time for the people of the United States to launch a new war against the evil of lies, deceit, and darkness, and go all out to win the victory of truth and transparency and light. Thank you.
All right. Well, boy, I wish he would be alive today to just get his feedback about all the stuff that's been happening. Because I know he's written a few books before, and if I remember email correctly, one of the answers he had given me was something about he's busy writing the last book, and the powers that be are trying real hard to do whatever they're doing, and he wanted to push this last book out to let everyone know. And I don't know. It's when it comes to certain people like that have been around for quite a long time, I really wish they would have tried to make it a few more years just to get to this point, to see finally that something has happened, that something has changed. Now, of course, it's not to the point to where everybody's out in the streets and just doing nothing else but talking about this, but at least it's gotten to a point to where it's a milestone for us. And I'm just excited to see where else it's going to go, because eventually it will get to the point where most of you watching and where I am now, maybe a few years from now, to where we can actually all sound like crazies discussing all kinds of context stories, without any kind of shame or guilt or thinking you might lose your job, or people at work might think you're crazy, or family might think you're crazy. So it's getting there. It's getting there. So talking about crazy, the other thing, so when the pandemic happened and they came out with all this stuff in March 2020, was like very heavy about, lockdowns and two weeks to stop the spread and whatever they were telling us at that time. They already, when you have a mint and you make quarters, you already have everything in plan. It's not like it just happens within a week or two. You go out and you start stamping it. There's designs and I'm sure discussions and planning happening for quite a while. So anyway, one thing that was very interesting at that time, it was brought out to me, and I saw they come up with several coins. And of course, I don't, obviously if they came out with several different ones, what are the chances that they would have one of them be the bat which the whole story initially was, it's, a bat sold at this market in China, in Wuhan, that basically, through people eating that kind of, whatever, eating that meat, that it made, that spread everything. Only later it turns out it was the lab in Wuhan itself. But anyway, they're still trying to contest that when a lot of evidence has come out that that was the case. However, whether intentional or unintentional, that it was the lab in Wuhan. Anyway, they have come out with this coin with the bat on it. And so I thought it was pretty interesting and, whatever. So just a couple of days ago, yesterday, we were going grocery shopping, and once a week we just go to Aldi's. And of course, for those that know, Aldi's has their carts where you put in a quarter and you can get the cart out to put all your groceries in. Well, my wife was at the center console. She took a quarter out and she was looking at it. It's like, did you see this? I'm like, what? And there was a lady that I read up a little bit about her. It's called she was called Edith. I'm gonna suck at pronounce this Kanakaole, and basically she was a native of Hawaii, and basically she just, it says here, preserved the culture, traditions, and history through hula and chanting. So anyway, with this already came out earlier this year, so way before anything happening in Hawaii. But it just, if you were looking at the coins themselves, you have the supposed virus, and bats caused it. Then you have a coin with bats, and then the fires in Maui, and then you have a coin about a native Hawaiian, on the coin. And at that point, pardon my French, I just said back, I'm just like, somebody's just got to be fucking with us. Otherwise, it's like the most awesomest coincidence in the history of coincidences. It's almost like a preemptive, a relation. Like, I guess if you want to know what's going to happen in 2024, just look at the coin that they're going to release and it'll give you an idea. And so anyway, they did also, to be fair about this, they did come out with several different coins also, like they did with this one. I don't think it's on this particular list. I think it's 5 of them. But I think they always focus on one for that particular year. That's kind of like their main. And so anyway, that's why I called this initially, when you saw the title, the U.S. quarter coin conspiracy. And so anyway, what are your thoughts about that? Is this just whatever coincidence? Nothing to it. Do you have some other thoughts? So I'm pretty much I'm done with what I wanted to show you today. If there's some of you that are on Telegram that would like to chime in, please raise your hand and I'll bring you in and we'll talk. Otherwise, if you have some questions or just want to make some statements in your chat, please make sure you put the 3 asterisks before your question, and go ahead and do that now so that I can kind of read through and see if there are any. If not, that's all I have for you today. I'm hoping that all of you learned something new, got something out of this program today. And if you did like it, I hope you subscribe and like the video. And of course, share it as well. But at least for open lines, sometimes, like perfect example today, if somebody doesn't come on, I still want to leave you with some content, with some material. And I haven't had much requests to share some of my own stories. So if you are interested, shoot me an email under ufohub.net, where you can basically there's a little form you can submit and just request this, or leave a comment in the chat or in the description, or meaning in the comment section below this video. So that way, at least I know that there's at least one person that wants to hear an aspect or an experience of mine. Otherwise, we'll try to keep on trying to get guests to come on. Sometimes I get lucky and have some regular ones. Otherwise, I'll switch over to open lines. And even open lines, the way it came about was because of other requests from people saying, hey, can you open this up for others to share their stories? And I don't know if it's maybe Telegram that might be a little bit inconvenient, but because it's just literally me here, there's nobody else to help me with watching at least 10 different things going on, streaming, windows, all the programs, audio settings, all of that. It makes it a lot easier for me to see who's coming on, who wants to talk, and then without pretty much pre-screening them, I can bring them in. But having let's say something like telephone number that has to dial tone, and then somebody answers, and usually in those larger places they can pre-screen them and then patch them in, and they can just basically be held on hold to then just start talking to whenever the host is ready. I don't have that ability. That's why it's mainly Telegram regarding chat. But I have Telegram for a lot bigger reason, which is that's basically my direct line to all of you, whoever cares to have a direct line with me or with UFO Hub in general. Because I've noticed I have some strikes on YouTube, and I did not want one more to where now it starts messing with my communication, because one more strike and they literally just cut you off entirely. So I can't tell you that I'm, in YouTube jail or whatever until those 7 days are over. Then one more time, it goes up to 30 days, and then they close the account after that. So this way, Telegram, it's one of other ways that will just assure that you can just find out what's going on. And of course, every time I'm done with this, I always also upload the entire library is already up to date. And after today, maybe within a day or two, I will have this program up on Rumble as well. So then that way there's a full library for all of you available that are interested to see previous interviews, previous shows, or whatever else I have available on there. And so if YouTube ever goes down, I've always talked about I could still do a live show using Twitch. So you can talk to me on Telegram. We'll be streaming live on Twitch, and then just upload it permanently to stay on Rumble if YouTube is ever kind of taken out of my streaming system so far. But anyway, all right, let's see here what we got. Got a lot of you in chatting, which I'm very happy about. Oh, there's Labeled. Welcome. Good to see you again. Crypto. Welcome. Jamie, Raidzer. Welcome all of you. I'm glad you guys were able to join. So let's see if I can pick up some questions here. Silky B is asking any new or further thoughts on Bashar. He's been coming out with different live streams that are coming up, and I'm part of their email list, and I get them on occasion, and I'll look over and see if it's something I want to see or have time for it. And I've just basically been, when it comes to Bashar, I've been reflecting a lot about what's going on. And this is something I thought about maybe to do a show on just regarding this little aspect. So like with a lot of people in control, a lot of times, even on individual levels or internationally, they'll do what we all know as projecting. So basically, the very thing they would accuse you of doing is something that they are doing, right? So if they're, talking about you, it's your fault that you're destroying the planet, it's secretly them destroying the planet by blaming it on you. If, they're claiming it's because of your existence, that now the planet is somehow overpopulated, basically, it's the opposite, that there really isn't a problem, but it's more of a resource issue than it is a living space issue, and anyway, that can be a whole program on its own at any given length, right? But anyway, what I was very interested about was recently I was becoming aware about the population crisis, that basically we will peak. And some of these countries are already there, where their population of elderly is way bigger than the youngsters coming up. So basically the infrastructure is not there to take care of this large aging population. It's been happening in Japan already for several years, and other countries. And so pretty much pretty much every single country, unless there's something that I haven't seen, but every single country is affected by this, and it's something that we're going to have to deal with, which basically then will cause just a natural decline in population, And what reminded me about Bashar, I'm sorry that kind of went off on a tangent to try to make this explanation here, but it was something he talked about a long time ago where somebody came up to the mic and asked him about, what about overpopulation? And he, from their perspective, and this is him talking as a representative of his race, assuming that they all are an alien race communicating with us via Daryl Enka, was saying that we don't have an issue with overpopulation, and the fact that the planet can technically handle about 19 billion people. The issue is that resources allocation, that certain groups take control and charge of certain resources that would help others, and so it creates that, for one, that scarcity, and not only that, also space. We all choose to just be in these packed cities and just, really densely, tightly packed, where then we start, only going upwards, basically like New York and all these different other buildings that are just high rises and people just living in these concrete boxes. And we're not sprawled out. I've seen several videos of people that, one, have done research, and others just for fun to record, that would let's say have a flight from East Coast to the West Coast, and majority of America alone is wasteland. Not the wasteland, basically there's no population, and then you get to these tiny bits of population that you can recognize as a city, and then again it's just this vast of land and trees and occasional farms and all of that. So it really is that gaslighting that's been happening and going on for so long. They're like, we're overpopulated and it's your fault because you're having babies and you're a worthless bottom eater, and you should not be alive, nor should anyone from your family be alive. And it's like, okay, then how come it's okay for you to be alive and buying all this other property, but the lowly little peasants like myself, I can't? Anyway, so those are just these small logical things that you start thinking about, start talking about, and then next thing you know, you're like, hold on a minute, this is BS, and you change your mind on what's going on. So anyway, Bashar was talking about that there would be a natural way, because they had this person ask him the question, was thinking, that will the population, then will there be a war, they'll decline some of the population and all this other stuff. And he was talking about that it will decline naturally to where some people would choose to have children, others won't, and then it will, decrease, because his reason and explanation for this huge influx is that 2012 for society on our world and spiritually, metaphysically, whatever, was a very important demarcation point. And a lot of these souls coming in wanted to be here for this moment, wanted to be alive during this time, of how we've been, however you want to perceive the past 12, 15 years, they wanted to be there for that experience. And basically after this demarcation, it would then it would taper off and then decline to a more natural level, to where then it's not so packed, and I should not the amount of people, but just the way we've been living on the planet. That there will be more involvement, or basically in the evolution in our ways of thinking, to where cities will have a different role and people will start living in different ways. Because especially this pandemic, it changed a lot, because Arkansas had an influx of people and they wanted to, they were like from Texas and different places. They're buying, especially around here now, they're buying these large plots of land in the woods because they saw what happens in the cities. And so whether that's one of many different causes, but people's mindsets is changing. And especially since now they can work remote, it doesn't matter if you live in the woods, you can still do your job and live wherever you want to live. So anyway, that's the latest thing that I was kind of thinking about Bashar, about what he was saying. And this was said in 06, 07 already, and I have, when the videos were more prevalent online, and I don't blame Daryl for taking them down from the internet, because it's his work he put in, and in collaboration with Bashar, to have these different videos. And somehow, the information is very enlightening and very positive, but there's always these people that just think, okay, well, then that means you should just give it to me for free. If you ask them to give you something for free, it's like, oh no, their time is valuable. They need to be compensated in some way, but everyone else should just do the right thing and just offer it, right? Because it will help humanity in general. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it would be great if a baker could just bake bread and a doctor just does this job and not charge everybody. That'd be awesome. But at this point, however we're living, we're not living in that world. And so he took basically Daryl Inca and his organization. They took a lot of those videos that people took conference sections or whole conferences, put them out on YouTube. He was able then to have them removed. Well, I don't distribute them, but I did during like 06, 07, managed to just save different YouTube videos just to have my own library so I can rewatch whatever I wanted to rewatch. And so it was basically kind of nice to be able to go back and just like, oh, okay, I've seen this 10 years ago, what did he say? I've seen this X amount years ago, what did he say? And he still has on his website, I think it's just bashar.org, I think, or is it Bashar Channeling? If you do a search, you should be able to find the website, and you can still go back and purchase some of the other documentaries or the meetings, or what are they called? Just basically where he does these sessions where Bashar comes through, he talks about a certain subject, and then for the remainder of the time, people would ask him questions. And those questions are all over the place, about all kinds of subjects, so you never know when you're going to get an answer, because it could be anywhere from whatever, like, why am I here? Or, all the way to why do humans whistle or something, because they ask literally everything. And so it was very informative, very knowledgeable, just to hear a perspective. And then later to realize, okay, let me, some of these things given, some of these answers given, let me try to apply it to my own life and see how it works out. As most of you know the story, I did, and it changed my life. But again, you don't have to follow any of that. You can listen to whoever you want to listen to, or whoever you find that meshes best with your way of thinking and trying to disseminate information. Because my wife, for example, she's like, not that the information is wrong, but like she can't listen to Bashar because she doesn't like the way he talks. So it's not something she can listen for a very long time, and so it could be something as simple as that, that's in your way. But thankfully, there are many other channels. There was a documentary called Tuning In, and they had several different channelers on, and also Bashar was part of that group. And I think it's also on YouTube. If you just search Tuning In, Spirit Channelers or something like that, you can watch the whole documentary. And there's something that just fell down in the studio, and I don't know what it was. But anyway, I'll check it out later. So anyway, when it comes to Bashar, it wasn't necessarily that it's some new information, but it's information that I've already heard and seen, and are just now seeing the results of his answer, understanding now what he was trying to get at. Because at that time, when you're 10 years ahead and you're explaining something, it's difficult to tell what the challenge would be or how something would be overcome, even when you are given an answer. Because for the longest time, I thought this change happening was more of a spiritual change. And it's like, how do you convince people that there is such thing as ghosts and an afterlife and all that? So I thought that's what that change was. But then 2016 came around, and it became very clear what the two differences are, and how the world will be split. Because believe it or not, the more I do, just from talking with family overseas and just seeing things, any kind of videos, information, anything I can disseminate, there's basically this divide everywhere. You have it in Europe, you have it in any one of the countries that are part of the European Union. Not to the extent of the craziness that we have here, but it's happening, and so I never thought that would ever happen, that it would be more of a ideological, political divide that then would make people pick and choose sides and, go certain routes. I always thought it would just be more of a on a metaphysical level, or I should say, it would be more of a spiritual metaphysical differences, to where those that are atheists and those that believe in God, or those that are into supernatural stuff and those that are not. And boy, was I wrong. So I'm happy that I can, at least find some answers within my lifetime to know, oh, okay, that's the answer given. I understand now what he meant. All right, sorry about all that. Let me see what Crypto says. He has a question, says, please retell the story of the vehicle accident you avoided because of the invisible interference, because it happened to me. Can you please give me a little bit more details? Because there's like 3 stories that come to mind. I'm not sure which one you're actually referring to. So if you could just give me a little bit more details, then I'll be more than happy to retell if you like. Okay, looking over, all right, nobody's still wanting to chat on Telegram, so we're good there. So anyway, if you have any other questions, please submit them in your chat. If you want to talk to me, please join Telegram. The link is in the description below to the UFO Hub Telegram group. So I'll still be on for a little bit. If you can manage to install it on time, then you should be good and golden to talk to me. But otherwise, you can always catch me some other time. Okay, the 1N, 1T, 1AT3. That's a very long username. So it says, what about the quarters? Basically, that was it. I don't know if this was just earlier or if I'm just seeing your question late. It's just that's basically it. If you wanted to see what's coming up that year, just look at the first quarter released and they'll give you a hint of what kind of problems we're going to have. That's what I was trying to get at, the quarter conspiracy. I'm sorry that's maybe not as juicy for you, whatever. I'm not making an assumption. I'm just making a general statement. It was just a mind-blowing thing to me. I was like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? And so, but yeah, there's been a lot of stuff that I wish I don't know, not that I can't cover it. I've seen a lot of things that have been happening in Hawaii about how the houses burned down, about these certain blue roofs that a lot of these celebrities have. And then somebody was showing how the lasers, they burn all the other colors, but for some reason it doesn't blue, and I don't understand the exact physics behind that because I haven't had much time to look into it. But of course, very passionate people that really are seeing something that is just off and they just want to go out online and tell it. It sometimes it doesn't help, because even if they're saying it in very passionate way and are very sincere and serious about this, just rambling off different facts and stuff can just turn somebody off and not listen to them, even though they could be right. That reminds me just about what's been going on with Hawaii and all the different people submitting videos. Reminds me of an episode. I forgot exactly which one it was, but it's Star Trek Voyager. And for those of you who are familiar, you'll know these character names I'm bringing up. For those who are not, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to mention them, and you can maybe go back and see if you can rewatch it somehow. But it was a perfect example of what's going on with the internet and humans in general. So in Voyager, you have a character called 7 of 9. And she basically, as a child, she was then assimilated to the board, by the board, and basically grew up in that collective. And so then when Voyager came around, through whatever circumstance in that episode, she was basically liberated. And so they removed however many implants or robotic parts they could, and to still kind of be a Borg human hybrid. And so of course then she's human, but then she has some abilities to do that a normal human being does not, because they would have to read things to disseminate information, where she can technically just download it. So her goal, or this character's goal, is constantly to achieve perfection, is constantly looking for ways to be efficient and in whatever she does. And so this particular episode started out with her basically taking 6 months worth of data and information that the ship collected, and that the rest of the crew was not able to kind of look over. And while she's in her recharging state, which is the Borg equivalent of sleeping, is basically she would download the entire database. And so what started out with, when she did it the first time, throughout all these different small little facts that she basically disseminated while she was asleep, she was able to determine that because of all these little dots she connected, that there was some kind of parasite in their little energy alcoves and whatever was happening, and that was kind of bogging down the efficiency of the ship. And so when the captain, and some of the other crews, they looked at it and sure enough found these little parasites flying around, and they were able to clean them up and get it done. So it got everyone kind of on notice that what she's doing, there's a story she told, and there's a backup showing that, yeah, there's facts that basically came out from this information she broke down. Well, as she kept downloading more and more information, she started getting paranoid, because now she's connecting dots and seeing things to where she would, invite the captain and say the first officer is, going to take over the ship because he's been planning this for years. And then she gives him facts about how that could be true. But then, next day she downloads more information, and then she, calls in the first officer, logs down that thing and said the captain is going to take over the ship. And so basically it reminded me, it was very funny the way it was happening, but it reminded me of us and human beings, is that I know we're not stupid on an individual level, but sometimes certain facts and certain things that we can find and point to, through one reason or another, I don't think we're really that qualified to be able to connect these dots and say, this is exactly how these little facts need to be connected to give you this end result. Because, the second Maui happened, there were all kinds of theories and dots connected showing, look at this picture, look at this happening, and look at that, this means this. And then next time something else happens, well, look what this happened, look what happened here, and this means that. And no, I'm, like I've always said, I'm always a fan of just learn as much as you can, but don't act on it like this, like your life depends on that, because you could be wrong. And so it's not just about, saving yourself some humiliation and some shame, but about, you could potentially just trying to find something that really isn't there, and just add to the confusion. And so anyway, I just wanted to share this story with all of you, and since I'm covering these coins, it's like, I'm not saying that they would definitely just look at that coin and they will definitely tell you, but it's interesting if you saw one thing happening and then next thing you automatically in your mind assume, okay, there's going to be this other result come 2024. And so anyway, it was something that got me riled up about it. And I figured, you know what? I don't often cover conspiracies, but this would be something to get all of you started and thinking about. Okay, well, Crypto still hasn't answered, or at least given me the other, like a hint about what he's talking about regarding the, please retell the story of the vehicle accident you avoided. I don't know if he's specifically talking about this particular one, but anyway, I'll just tell you this one, and if he has a different one that I talked to him about, I'm sorry, I can't remember right now. Well, one was basically when I used to work in St. Louis, I would only have X amount of time for lunch, and I would just, from that building where I worked, would go to lunch, and I would always lally-dag and really not wanting to go back, so I would overstay at lunch and always coming back late. And so a lot of times I would always rush back. Well, I was in this particular intersection, what the street is doesn't matter right now, but I was basically waiting, and I'm always just wait, looking for it to turn green so I can get going, because I'm already late and I don't want to be any later than what I was. And so in that instant, as I was looking, I just had this feeling overcome me to where I should just relax, like it's going to be okay. if I'm late, I'm late. It's like, what am I going to do? I knew I did this to myself. There's no point of just getting all stressed out about it, because no matter how much I tried to get there, or how fast I would drive, I would still arrive late. And I had just relaxed. And as I was just this feeling that overcame me to just relax, I saw the green and I was like, all right, well, usually I would just as green, hit the gas and go. But in this particular instant, I was just 2 seconds later than what I usually would have been on that gas pedal. And I saw green, hesitated. And then when I decided to go, there was a vehicle that just swooshed by at least 70 miles an hour and way above the speed limit, because I think it was 25 miles an hour in those streets, in St. Louis. You can't drive very fast there. And I couldn't help myself. If I literally left when I intended to leave, to hit that gas to go, I would have been right there in the middle of intersection to just get T-boned. And it's one of those things that just stick with you. Whatever that feeling, whatever that happened, whatever you want to call this, it was just one of those things that's like, that saved my life, And so I have many different stories similar to that, but it's quite life changing. It's just something that sticks with you, and always makes you wonder. All right. Well, I think that should be it. There's no more questions, and I appreciate everyone else that joined in today. Join me again next week. Either I'll have another open lines with hopefully more interesting information and videos for all of you. Otherwise, I'm hoping to have a guest, and so they can talk to you about whatever it is that they want to talk about, whatever their specialty is. But it usually is at 7 every Wednesday. And I know for a while there I was out, but it looks like everything's good, knock on wood. And I should be back on a regular basis, either with a guest or open lines. So I'm really hoping that you'll be able to join me for next week. All right, well, thanks everyone. I appreciate it. Have a good day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.